The Great Hall on Kepler Prime was bigger than most cities. 12 different alien species sat around a table that could hold 1,000 beings. The air smelled of strange chemicals and fear. Today was the day the 1,000-year peace treaty would end. Ambassador Tae-ho walked into the hall wearing a simple black suit. He looked small next to the giant aliens around him. The HFY War Chief was 3 meters tall with green scales and teeth like knives. The Melody Queen floated in a bubble of pink gas. The Chronox delegate had 6 arms and eyes that glowed red in the dark. Tae-ho smiled at them all and took his seat. He pulled out a small tablet and began reading the news from Earth. Something about a new coffee shop opening in Seoul. The aliens stared at him. "Human," growled the HFY War Chief. His voice sounded like rocks grinding together. "Do you know why we called this meeting?" "Sure," said Tae-ho without looking up from his tablet. "The treaty ends today. You want to talk about what happens next?" The War Chief stood up. His massive form cast a shadow over half the table. "The 1,000-year peace is over. Your species has grown weak and soft. You have forgotten how to fight. Your worlds are fat and lazy. We will take them all." Tae-ho looked up from his tablet. He blinked once. Then he started laughing. It was not a nervous laugh. It was not a scared laugh. It was the kind of deep, happy laugh someone makes when they hear the funniest joke in the universe. Tae-ho laughed so hard he had to wipe tears from his eyes. The aliens looked at each other. This was not what they expected. "Something is funny, human?" asked the Melody Queen. Her voice was like singing, but cold as ice. Tae-ho kept laughing for another minute. Finally, he took a deep breath and smiled at the War Chief. "I'm sorry. It's just, you think we've been at peace." The hall went silent. Even the translator machine stopped humming. The Chronox delegate leaned forward. "Have you not been at peace for 1,000 years?" "Oh, we signed the treaty," said Tae-ho. He put his tablet away and folded his hands. "We followed all the rules. No wars between species. No attacking each other's worlds. No building armies to fight our neighbors." He paused, and his smile got bigger. "But you never asked us to stop preparing for war." The War Chief's scales changed from green to dark red. "What do you mean?" "I mean," said Tae-ho, "humans are really good at getting ready for the next fight. We've had 1,000 years to practice." Far away from Kepler Prime, on a world called Earth, Admiral Sora sat in a room deep under the ocean. The room had no windows. The walls were made of metal that could stop a nuclear bomb. Screens covered every surface, showing information from across the galaxy. Lieutenant Boram ran into the room holding a data pad. "Admiral, the declaration just came in. All 12 species have agreed. They're declaring war." Sora was a small woman with gray hair and calm eyes. She had been waiting for this day for 30 years. She looked at the screens showing human colonies across the galaxy. Peaceful farms, mining stations, research labs, trading posts. "Good," she said quietly. "Send the activation codes to all sectors. Use the old Korean phrase." "Which phrase, Admiral?" Sora smiled the same way Tae-ho had smiled. "Tell them the game is over. It's time to show our cards." Boram sent the message across the galaxy. On 1,000 worlds, in 1,000,000 hidden places, humans received 3 simple words in Old Korean. "No liga gutnasta." The game is over. Back. On Kepler Prime, the alien delegates were getting angry. "You mock us," said the war chief. "Humans are weak. Your soldiers are fat. Your ships are slow. Your weapons are toys." "When did you last see our soldiers?" asked Tae-ho. The war chief paused. "The treaty inspection 10 years ago." "And they looked fat and lazy?" "Yes." "What about our ships?" "Old and weak," said the Melody Queen. "We saw them. Simple metal boxes with basic engines." Tae-ho nodded. "And our weapons?" "Primitive energy cannons," growled the Chronox delegate. "The same technology from 1,000 years ago." "Interesting," said Tae-ho. He stood up and walked to the great window that looked out at the stars. "Tell me, when you inspected our worlds, did you go everywhere?" "Of course not," said the war chief. "We saw the cities, the farms, the factories, but not the basements." The aliens looked confused. "Did you look under the ground? Did you check the bottom of the oceans? Did you scan the inside of mountains?" The war chief's red scales began to turn black. "What are you saying?" Tae-ho turned around. His face was still friendly, but something had changed in his eyes. "I'm saying humans are very good at hiding things. We've had 1,000 years of peace to practice." On Earth, the Pacific Ocean began to move. Water swirled in patterns that made no sense. Then something rose from the deep. It was not a ship. It was not a building. It was a city. A city that had been hiding on the ocean floor for 800 years. Towers of crystal and metal reached toward the sky. Weapons that bent light itself pointed at the stars. Gardens full of Earth's most. Beautiful flowers grew between gun turrets that could crack planets. Sora watched it rise on her screens. "Beautiful," she said to Bo-Ram. "The Atlantis project always was our prettiest base." "Should we show them the others?" asked Bo-Ram. "Not yet," said Sora. "Let's see how they react to just one." On Mars, a farmer named Jae-hoon was feeding his animals when his communicator beeped. He read the message and smiled. He had been waiting for this day since he was a child. Jae-hoon walked to his barn. To anyone watching, it looked like a normal barn full of normal farm equipment. He pressed his hand against what looked like a wooden wall. The wall scanned his palm and opened. Inside was a control room that belonged on a starship. Screens showed the position of every alien vessel within 50 light years. Weapon systems that existed only in theory waited for his command. "This is Firebase 17, he said into his headset. "All systems green. Ready for activation." Similar messages came from farms across the galaxy, from mining stations that mined more than rocks, from research labs that researched more than science, from trading posts that traded more than goods. Back on Kepler Prime, Tae-ho was still talking. To the confused aliens, "You want to know the funny part?" he said. "We actually are peaceful. We don't like fighting. We prefer to grow food and make art and explore the universe." "Then why?" began the Melody Queen. "Because," said Tae-ho, "the best way to keep peace is to be ready for war. And humans are very, very good at getting ready." He walked back to his chair and sat down. "So yes, the 1,000-year peace is over. You want to declare war. That's your choice." The war chief leaned forward. "You think you can stop us?" Tae-ho laughed again, but this time it was a different kind of laugh. Quieter, more dangerous. "Stop you? Oh, we're not going to stop you. We're going to teach you why humans spent 1,000 years preparing for this day." The translator machine started humming again. Data flowed between worlds. War fleets began to move. But in the deep places of the galaxy, in the hidden corners of peaceful human worlds, something else was waking up. Something that had been sleeping for a very long time. The 1,000-year peace was over. The real fun was about to begin. The HFY War fleet was the pride of their empire. 3,000 ships, each one bigger than a mountain. Their hulls were made of the strongest metal in the galaxy. Their weapons could burn through planets. They had never lost a battle. War Chief Gorthak stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching the screens show human space. The first target was a small research station orbiting a dying star. Intelligence said it had maybe 50 humans and some science equipment. "Easy prey," growled Gorthak. "We will crush them in minutes." But when they arrived at the research station, something was wrong. The human ship waiting for them did not look right. It seemed to be made of light itself, like someone had taken starlight and shaped it into the form of a vessel. The Vorthak. Sensors could not read it properly. Captain Hyun Woo stood on the bridge of the human ship called Silent Dawn. He was young for a ship captain, barely 30 years old. But he had been training for this moment his entire life. "Sir," said his weapons officer, a woman named Da-un, "the Vorthak fleet is targeting us. 3,000 ships." "I see them," said Hyun Woo calmly. He touched a panel on his chair. "This is Silent Dawn to all human vessels. The awakening protocol is now active. Repeat, awakening protocol is active." Across human space, the message spread. On 1,000 worlds, humans received the signal they had been waiting for. The long sleep was over. The Vorthak opened fire first. Energy beams that could melt asteroids shot toward the Silent Dawn. But something impossible happened. The beams passed right through the human ship, like it was made of empty air. "What is this?" roared Gorthak. "Fire again!" They fired again, and again. Every shot passed harmlessly through the Silent Dawn. The human ship seemed to exist and not exist at the same time. Hyun-woo watched the alien weapons pass through his vessel and smiled. "Their turn is over, Dae-yoon. Show them what we learned during our 1,000 years of peace." The Silent Dawn fired a single shot. It was not an energy beam or a missile. It was something that bent space itself, creating a hole in reality that reached out toward the alien fleet. Where the shot touched, Vorthak ships simply stopped being, not exploded, not destroyed. They just weren't there anymore. Perfect spheres of empty space appeared where mighty warships had been floating a moment before. In 30 seconds, half the Vorthak fleet was gone. "Impossible," whispered Gorthak. "What kind of weapon is this?" The answer came as a calm voice speaking perfect Vorthak language. "This is Captain Hyun Woo of the human research vessel Silent Dawn. The weapon you just experienced is called a reality editor. We invented it 200 years ago during our peaceful studies of quantum mechanics." Gorthak's scales turned white with fear. "Research vessel? You call this a research vessel?" "Oh, yes," said Hyun-woo pleasantly. "This is one of our science ships. Our actual warships are much more interesting." Far away, on the red planet humans called Mars, Dr. Minsu received the activation signal in his laboratory. He was a thin man with kind eyes who loved growing plants in impossible places. For 50 years, he had been the head of agricultural research on Mars. He was also the director of Project Lazarus, the most secret project in human space. Minsu walked to what looked like a simple computer terminal. He typed in a code that was longer than most books. The screen flashed green. "Computer," he said, "activate Project Lazarus, full awakening sequence." "Confirmed, Dr. Min-soo. Awakening Mars. Estimated time to full activation, 7 minutes." Above his head, the surface of Mars began to change. The red dirt started to move and flow like water. Mountains shifted and reshaped themselves. Valleys opened and closed like giant mouths. The alien spies watching from orbit could not believe what they were seeing. The entire planet was transforming itself. What they did not know was that Mars had not been a normal planet for 600 years. Every grain of sand, every rock, every molecule of air had been slowly replaced with something else, something that could think, something that could fight. Mars was not just a planet anymore. Mars was a weapon. On the farming world called New Busan, Jae-hoon was milking his cows when his communicator beeped 3 times. The special signal. He patted his favorite cow on the head and walked to his barn. To anyone watching, Jae-hoon looked like a simple farmer. He wore old clothes and had dirt under his fingernails. His farm looked normal too. Fields of grain, barns full of animals, silos for storing food. But Jae-hoon had not always been a farmer. Before the peace treaty, he had been Colonel Jae-hoon, one of the best military engineers in human space. When the treaty was signed, he had volunteered for the Long Watch. 1,000 years of pretending to be something he was not. He pressed, his hand against the barn door. It scanned his palm and opened, revealing a control room that would have impressed the best alien scientists. Screens showed the movement of every ship within 100 light years. Weapon systems that bent the laws of physics waited for his command. "This is Firebase New Busan," he said into his headset. "All systems ready, awaiting orders." Similar reports came from across the galaxy. Farmers who were not farmers. Miners who mined more than ore. Teachers who taught more than children. Every human colony had been hiding something. Outside his barn, Jae-hoon's grain silos began to change. They unfolded like flowers blooming, revealing themselves to be something else entirely. Weapons platforms, defense turrets, launch bays for ships that had been sleeping underground for centuries. His cow pasture opened like a door. Inside was a squadron of fighter craft that used technology the aliens had never seen. They looked like they were carved from pure energy, beautiful and terrible at the same time. Back in space, Captain Hyunwoo was still talking to the remaining Vorthak ships. "Would you like to see more of our peaceful research?" he asked politely. "We have been studying so many interesting things during our 1,000 years of not fighting wars." Gorthak's voice was shaking. "What are you?" "We are humans," said Hyunwoo. "We are explorers. We are scientists. We are farmers and artists and dreamers." He paused. "We are also the most dangerous species in the galaxy, and we have spent 1,000 years proving it to ourselves." The silent dawn moved toward the remaining alien ships. It did not fly like a normal vessel. It seemed to step through space, appearing in one place and then another without crossing the distance between. "You see," continued Hyunwoo, "the wonderful thing about peace treaties is that they only forbid certain activities. Fighting wars, for example, building armies to attack your neighbors, threatening other species." Another chunk of the Vorthak fleet simply vanished as the silent dawn fired again. But they don't forbid research. They don't forbid preparing to defend yourself. And they certainly don't forbid getting creative with technology. On Mars, the transformation was complete. The red planet had become something that hurt to look at directly. Its surface moved like a living thing, covered in structures that seemed to exist in more than 3 dimensions. Weapons that could reshape reality pointed at the stars. Dr. Min-soo watched from his laboratory, now revealed to be the control center for the most powerful weapon ever built. "Mars online," he reported to Admiral Sora. Ready for target designation. Understood. Mars control. Hold position and await orders. In the asteroid belt, mining station Omega-7 received its activation signal. The station had been extracting rare metals for 300 years. At least that's what the official record said. Station Commander Yu Jin smiled as she watched her instruments come alive. Omega-7 was not a mining station. It was a factory. For 3 centuries, it had been building ships. Millions of ships. All hidden in hollowed-out asteroids, waiting for this day. "This is Omega-7, she reported. "Ghost Fleet is ready for launch. Awaiting orders." The asteroids around the station began to crack open like eggs. Inside each one was a warship unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. They moved without engines, struck without weapons that could be detected, and existed without showing up on any known type of sensor. Across human space, the awakening continued. On 1,000 worlds, humans stopped pretending to be peaceful farmers and researchers. They revealed themselves to be what they had always been, the most creative, determined, and terrifyingly prepared warriors in the galaxy. But the most shocking awakening was yet to come. In the outer system of Sol, Earth's original home, something enormous began to move. Something that had been hiding in plain sight for 800 years. The moon, Earth's ancient satellite, started to unfold. The battle for the Centauri system was supposed to be easy. 3 alien species had joined together to attack what their intelligence said was a small human research station. The melody had brought their singing ships that could drive enemies, insane with sound. The Chronox had sent their metal warriors that could not be killed. The Bexari had deployed their hive mind fleet that thought as one giant brain. 10,000 ships surrounded the single human vessel called Quiet Thunder. Commander Dong Hyun stood on the bridge of his ship, reading a book about ancient Earth poetry. He was a calm man who had spent 40 years studying literature and 30 years preparing for war. Today, both interests would serve him well. "Sir," said his censor officer, Yunji, "enemy fleets are in position, 10,000 ships total." Dong Hyun looked up from his book and adjusted his glasses. 10,000? That seems excessive for a single research vessel. "Should we call for backup?" asked his weapons officer, a young man named Ki-tae. "No need," said Dong Hyun. He marked his place in the poetry book and set it aside. "This is a teaching moment. We should make it educational." The alien fleets opened communications. 3 different voices spoke at once, creating a horrible noise that would have driven most species mad. "Human vessel!" screamed the Melody commander. "You are surrounded. Surrender now and we will make your death quick." "Resistance is impossible," boomed the Chronox war leader. "Our ships are invincible. Our weapons cannot be stopped." "Your thoughts betray your fear," hissed the Bexari hive mind. "We taste your terror through space itself." Commander Dong Hyun activated his communication system. When he spoke, his voice was gentle and patient, like a teacher explaining something simple to confused students. "Good morning," he said politely. "This is Commander Dong Hyun of the human research vessel Quiet Thunder. I believe there has been a misunderstanding." "The only misunderstanding," growled the Chronox, "is your belief that you can resist us." "Actually," said Dong Hyun, "the misunderstanding is about mathematics. You brought 10,000 ships to fight one. That suggests you don't understand how human mathematics works." Yunji looked at her captain with curiosity. "Sir, what kind of mathematics are we teaching today?" Dong Hyun smiled the way teachers smile when they have a particularly interesting lesson planned. "Exponential reduction, Yunji. We'll demonstrate on exactly 1,000 ships. That should be enough to make our point clear. He turned to Kaite. Prepare the reality engine. Single pulse, wide dispersal pattern. Sir, said Kaite nervously, the reality engine is still experimental. We've never used it on this scale. Then today we'll learn something new together, said Dong Hyun. Fire when ready. The quiet thunder did not look like a warship. It was smooth and white, more like a work of art than a weapon of war. But when it fired, the very nature of space changed around it. A beam of something that was not light, not energy, and not matter reached out from the human ship. It moved faster than physics should allow and touched exactly 1,000 alien vessels scattered throughout the enemy fleet. Where the beam touched, the ships did not explode. They did not burn. They did not break apart. They simply stopped existing. Perfect spheres of empty space appeared where mighty warships had been, floating a moment before. But that was not the most terrifying part. The empty spheres began to grow. The nothingness spread outward like a virus, consuming more ships. Matter rushed in to fill the voids, creating gravitational whirlpools that pulled in even more vessels. In exactly 60 seconds, 1/10 of the alien armada had been reduced to cosmic dust and scattered atoms. The surviving ships hung in space, too shocked to move. Commander Dong Hyun activated his communication system again. His voice was still calm and pleasant. This concludes your first lesson in human mathematics, he said. As you can see, 10,000 minus 1,000 equals 9,000. But in our mathematics, 1,000 destroyed equals many more consumed by the resulting gravitational cascade. The exact number depends on ship positioning and mass density. He paused to pick up his poetry book. Class dismissed. Please return to your home systems and share what you have learned with your governments. There will be additional lessons if needed. The alien fleets fled without another word. Back on Earth, Engineer Eugene put the finishing touches on humanity's greatest work of art. She was a small woman with oil-stained hands and dreams bigger than solar systems. For 60 years, she had been the chief architect of Project Moonrise. Final systems check complete, she reported to Admiral Sora. The Luna platform is ready for deployment. Sora watched from her command center as humanity's most beautiful secret began to reveal itself. High above Earth, the moon started to change. What every species in the galaxy had assumed was a natural satellite began to unfold like an origami sculpture made by gods. Sections of the lunar surface slid apart, revealing structures underneath that had been growing for 8 centuries. The moon was not a moon anymore. It was the largest spacecraft ever built. Gardens of Earth's most beautiful flowers grew between weapon systems that could rearrange solar systems. Libraries containing all human knowledge shared space with factories that could build entire fleets in hours. Art galleries full of humanity's greatest treasures stood next to laboratories where humans had learned to rewrite the laws of reality. "My God," whispered one of the alien observers monitoring human space. "The entire moon is a ship." Eugene smiled as she watched her life's work stretch and grow. The Luna platform was more than a weapon. It was proof that humans could turn anything into something beautiful and terrible at the same time. "Luna platform online," she reported. "All systems operational. Ready for anything you can imagine, Admiral." In the Vega system, the human colony, called New Sol, was hosting its annual flower festival when the activation signal arrived. Citizens were walking through gardens, admiring cherry blossoms and enjoying street food. Colonel Hiron, disguised as a schoolteacher, received the Coded message during a puppet show for children. She smiled at her students and excused herself to make a phone call. "This is Sunflower Base," she said quietly into her communicator. "Confirming activation signal received. Initiating full deployment." New Sol had been more than a colony for 600 years. Every building, every garden, every playground had been carefully designed with a secret purpose. The Flower Festival grounds were actually landing pads for attack craft. The schools were command centers. The hospitals were weapons factories. But the most impressive feature was the city's transportation system. For centuries, humans had built tunnels under New Sol for their trains and cargo systems. The aliens who inspected the colony saw an efficient underground transportation network. What they did not see was that the tunnels connected to similar networks on 300 other human worlds. New Sol was not just a colony. It was the nerve center of the largest military communication system ever built. "All Sunflower stations, this is base," reported Hye-Rin. "Network activation in progress. Estimated time to full connectivity. 12 minutes. Across human space, similar reports came in. Every human world, every station, every outpost had been connected by secret tunnels that existed in folded space. Information could travel from one end of human territory to the other faster than light itself. The aliens had been watching individual human colonies for 1,000 years. They had never realized they were looking at pieces of a single, vast organism. On the farming world of Jeju Prime, botanist Woo Hyun received his activation orders while tending his prized rose garden. He was known throughout the sector as a gentle man who could make anything grow, even in the harshest conditions. What the aliens did not know was that Woo Hyun's specialty was not just growing plants. His specialty was growing plants that could think. "This is garden control," he said into a communicator hidden inside a sunflower. "Bio network is ready for full activation. Awaiting final orders." For 800 years, Woo Hyun and others like him had been seeding human space with special plants. Flowers that could see, trees that could hear, grass that could think. Every human world was covered with vegetation that was actually a vast intelligence network. The aliens had been observed by human gardens for centuries without ever knowing it, but the most shocking revelation was still to come. On the research station orbiting the black hole called Charybdis, Dr. Jin-A made the final preparations for humanity's most ambitious project. She had spent her entire life studying physics, pushing the boundaries of what was possible. The black hole had been humanity's laboratory for 300 years. They had learned to harvest its energy, bend its gravity, and use its impossible physics to break the rules that governed normal space. "This is Charybdis Station," she reported to Admiral Sora. "The Infinity Project is ready for demonstration. We can deploy at your command." What Dr. Jin-A had built was not just a weapon. It was not just a tool. It was a way to rewrite reality itself, using the power of a black hole to make impossible things possible. Commander Dong-hyun finished his poetry lesson and looked out at the stars. In the distance, he could see alien fleets regrouping, trying to understand what they had witnessed. "Yunji," he said thoughtfully, "send a message to Admiral Sora. Tell her the educational phase is complete. The aliens now understand that they don't understand us at all." The emergency session of the Galactic Council had been called after the disasters at Centauri and 12 other systems. Alien leaders who had been confident 3 days ago now sat in fear around the great table on Kepler Prime. War Chief Gorthak of the Vorthak had lost half his fleet to a single human ship. Queen Melody of the Melody could not understand weapons that edited reality itself. The Bizarre hive mind was traumatized by technologies that made no sense to their collective intelligence. "We need information," declared Supreme Chancellor Vex of the Chronox Empire. His 6 arms gestured frantically as he spoke. "What are these humans really capable of? How did they hide this from us for 1,000 years?" Intelligence Officer Su-min entered the chamber carrying a data pad and wearing the patient expression of someone about to deliver very bad news. She was a small human woman with gray hair and tired eyes who had spent 50 years collecting secrets for the diplomatic corps. "Honored delegates," she said politely, "you asked for a briefing on human military capabilities during the peace period. I am afraid the situation is more complex than you realized." She activated the chambers. Holographic display system. Images of human colonies appeared in the air above the table. "Let me start with a simple question," said Su-min. "How many human worlds do you think exist?" "Our intelligence says approximately 800 colonies," replied Chancellor Vex. Su-min nodded. "Your intelligence is correct. We do have 800 official colonies, but you asked the wrong question." The display changed, showing a map of human space that was 10 times larger than what the aliens had believed. The right question is, how many human installations exist? The answer is approximately 200,000. Stunned silence filled the chamber. 200,000? Whispered Queen Melody. "That is impossible. We have monitored human expansion for centuries." "Yes, you have," agreed Su-min. "You monitored our official expansion. You watched us build cities and farms and research stations. What you did not see was everything else." The display zoomed in on a system the aliens knew well. It showed a single human mining station extracting metals from an asteroid belt. "This is the Kepler 442 system," said Su-min. "Your records show one human mining station with a crew of 50. Would you like to see what is really there?" The image changed. The single mining station was now revealed to be the visible tip of a massive military complex. Hundreds of installations were hidden throughout the asteroid belt. Weapon platforms, ship factories, training centers, command bunkers. Every asteroid larger than a city block has been hollowed out and converted into a military facility, explained Su-min. "We have been doing this for 700 years. War Chief Gorthak's scales had turned completely white. "How did you hide this from our inspections?" "We didn't hide it," said Su-min with a gentle smile. "We put it in plain sight and let you ignore it." The display showed inspection records from the treaty monitoring visits. "Your inspectors came to our worlds exactly as the treaty required," she continued. "They visited our cities, toured our farms, examined our factories. They were very thorough about checking the things they could see." She paused, and her smile became slightly dangerous. "But they never asked to see our basements. They never scanned below ground. They never checked the bottom of our oceans or the inside of our mountains. And they certainly never looked inside our asteroids or moons." The display showed cross-section views of human worlds. Every planet was revealed to be riddled with underground installations that went down for kilometers. Underwater cities covered the ocean floors. Weapon systems were built into the cores of moons. "You see," said Su-min, "humans are very good at following the letter of the law while completely ignoring its spirit. The treaty said we could not build armies to attack our neighbors. So we built armies to defend our homes. The treaty said we could not develop weapons for conquest. So we developed weapons for protection." "But these are the same things," protested Chancellor Vex. "Legally, no," replied Su-min. "Practically, yes. We are very good at understanding the difference." The display changed again, showing human trade, ships that had been visiting alien worlds for centuries. "Now let me tell you about our merchant vessels," said Su-min. "You welcomed them to your worlds. They brought useful goods and took away things you wanted to sell. Very peaceful, very beneficial for everyone." Queen Melody began to make a sound like a sad song. "What were they really doing?" "Learning," said Su-min simply. "Every human trader was also an intelligence officer. Every cargo ship carried scanning, equipment that mapped your worlds, studied your defenses, and analyzed your capabilities. For 1,000 years, human merchants have been conducting the largest intelligence operation in galactic history." The aliens stared at the data showing their own worlds. Every major city, every military base, every important facility had been mapped and studied by humans for centuries. "We know the layout of your capital cities better than you do," continued Su-min. "We know the schedules of your supply ships, the passwords for your communication systems, and the personal habits of your leaders. We have detailed plans for conquering every world in this chamber, though we hope we never need to use them." War Chief Gorthak stood up on shaking legs. "This is a violation of every principle of the peace treaty." "Actually, no," said Su-min, consulting her data pad. "Article 15 of the treaty specifically protects the right of free trade between species. Article 23 guarantees the right to gather public information. Our merchants never entered restricted areas without permission. They never stole classified data. They simply paid attention to everything they could legally see and hear." She looked up at the terrified aliens. "The problem was not that we broke your laws. The problem was that you assumed we thought the same way you do." The display showed a timeline of human activity during the peace period. Year 100. We studied your technologies and learned to defend against them. Year 100.300. We developed countermeasures for every weapon system in your arsenals. Year 300.500. We created new technologies that your science cannot understand or duplicate. Year 500.700. We built hidden installations throughout human space. Year 700.900. We connected all our worlds with secret communication networks. Year 900.1000. We prepared for this exact moment." Captain Inho of the stealth reconnaissance ship, Whisper materialized in the chamber without warning. One moment the space next to Su-min was empty, the next moment a tall human man in a simple uniform was standing there. The aliens jumped back in terror. Their sensors had not detected his arrival. "Sorry I'm late," said Inho pleasantly. "I was observing your home fleets. Interesting formations, by the way. Very traditional." Chancellor Vex pointed all 6 arms at the human captain. "How did you get here? Our security systems would have detected any ship." Inho smiled. "Your security systems are looking for ships that exist in normal space-time. The Whisper exists in several dimensions at once. We learned how to build ships like this by studying the physics of black holes." He activated a small device on his wrist. The air above the table filled with images of alien home systems. "While you have been attacking our outer colonies," he said, "I have been watching your capitals. Beautiful worlds, by the way. It would be a shame if anything happened to them." The images showed massive human installations hidden in the outer systems of every alien home world, weapon platforms that had been there for decades without being detected, defense networks that could destroy entire fleets, monitoring stations that had been watching and learning for generations. "You have been planning this war for months," said Inho. "We have been planning for it for centuries." Su-min stepped forward again. But here is the most important thing you need to understand. Everything I have shown you, every weapon we have revealed, every impossible technology we have demonstrated, represents approximately 12% of our actual military capability. The silence in the chamber was so complete that the air recycling systems sounded like thunder. 12%? Whispered Queen Melody. The technologies you have seen were developed during our first century of peace, explained Su Min. We are now in our 10th century. Our current projects are several orders of magnitude beyond what we have shown you. She gestured to Captain In-Ho, who nodded and activated another device. For example, said In-Ho, the Whisper is not our most advanced stealth ship. It is what we built to test concepts for our actual stealth technology. Our real reconnaissance vessels exist outside normal space-time entirely. They have been studying your species from dimensions you do not know exist. The display showed technical diagrams that hurt to look at directly. Weapon systems that operated on principles the aliens had never encountered. Defensive technologies that seemed to break the fundamental laws of physics. We have ships that exist in the past and future. Simultaneously, continued In-Ho, we have weapons that can destroy targets before we fire them. We have defensive systems that protect us from attacks that haven't been invented yet. Su Min picked up her data pad and walked toward the exit. You wanted to know what humans are capable of, she said. Now you know. We are capable of spending 1,000 years of peace preparing for 30 minutes of war. We are capable of hiding military projects inside flower gardens. We are capable. 3 weeks after the disaster at Kepler Prime, the alien leaders sent a desperate message to Earth. They wanted to meet. They wanted to talk. They wanted to return to the peace treaty that they now realized had been the only thing protecting them from humanity. President Na-Rae of the United Human Federation read their message in her office in New Geneva. She was a grandmother who had spent 30 years growing prize-winning roses and 20 years running the most powerful government in the galaxy. Today, she would do both. They want to negotiate, she said to her advisor, Deputy Minister Chang Ho. How refreshing! Usually people wait until after we destroy a few of their planets before they want to talk. Chang Ho was a thin man with gentle eyes and a smile that could hide thermonuclear weapons. Where should we meet them, Madam President? Haven, she replied immediately. If they want to see how serious we are about peace, they should visit our most peaceful world. Haven was exactly what its name suggested. Rolling green hills covered in wildflowers, crystal clear lakes that reflected perfect blue skies, small towns with white houses and friendly people who waved at strangers. It was the most beautiful world humans had ever found, and they had spent 400 years making it even more perfect. The alien delegates arrived in their fastest ships, flying through space with the desperate speed of people running from a fire. War Chief Gorthak, Queen Melody, Chancellor Vex, and leaders from 9 other species landed at Haven's only spaceport, which looked like a garden with landing pads scattered between rose bushes. President Na-Rae met them personally, wearing a simple dress and a sun hat. She was carrying a basket of fresh fruit from her own garden. Welcome to Haven, she said warmly. I hope your journey was pleasant. Would you like some strawberries? We grow the best ones in the galaxy here. The alien leaders looked around nervously. Haven did not look like the capital world of a military superpower. It looked like a farming community where nothing more dangerous than a bee had ever existed. President Na-Rae, said Chancellor Vex, his 6 arms fidgeting with anxiety, we have come to discuss terms. We wish to return to the peace treaty. We realize now that the war declaration was premature. "Oh, how wonderful," said Narray, clapping her hands together like a delighted child. "I do love it when people want to be peaceful. Haven is the perfect place to discuss such things." She led them down a path lined with cherry trees toward a small building that looked like a country cottage. Birds sang in the branches. Butterflies danced among the flowers. A gentle breeze carried the scent of jasmine and fresh bread. "Your world is very beautiful," said Queen Melody, her voice carrying notes of suspicious wonder. "It seems so quiet." "Oh, yes," agreed Narray, stopping to admire a particularly lovely patch of daisies. "Haven has been peaceful for over 3 centuries. Nothing violent has ever happened here." What she did not mention was that every daisy, every blade of grass, every grain of pollen in the air around them was a sensor. The entire planet was watching the alien delegation with instruments so advanced they could count individual molecules. They reached the cottage, which had a charming garden and a porch with rocking chairs. Inside, it looked like a grandmother's living room, complete with handmade quilts and photographs of smiling humans. "Please, sit wherever you're comfortable," said Narray, bustling around like a perfect hostess. "I'll make some tea. We grow the most wonderful herbs here." The aliens sat carefully on furniture that seemed too delicate for beings of their size. Through the windows, they could see humans working in gardens, children playing in fields, and elderly couples walking hand in hand down peaceful lanes. "This doesn't look like the capital of a military empire," muttered War Chief Gorthak. "That's because it isn't," said Narray, returning with a tea service that probably cost more than most planets. "Haven is where I come to think about peaceful things. It helps me remember why we work so hard to avoid wars." General Wu Hyun entered through the back door, brushing soil from his hands. He looked like a retired farmer, with sun-weathered skin and clothes that smelled of earth and growing things. "Sorry I'm late," he said pleasantly. "I was checking on the tomatoes. We're expecting a wonderful harvest this year." Narray introduced him to the aliens. "This is General Wu Hyun, our Minister of Agricultural Defense. He makes sure our farms are properly protected." The aliens relaxed slightly. Agricultural defense sounded harmless enough. What they did not know was that General Wu Hyun was the architect of humanity's most terrifying military doctrine. He had spent 50 years developing the concept of total environmental warfare, turning entire planets into single, vast weapons. "Now then," said Narray, pouring tea with steady hands, "you mentioned wanting to discuss terms. How lovely. I do enjoy a good negotiation." Chancellor Vex leaned forward eagerly. "We propose returning to the original treaty. No wars, no aggression, peaceful coexistence as before." "Oh, that sounds wonderful," said Narray, "but I'm afraid there are a few small problems with that approach." She set down her teacup, and her grandmother's smile became something cooler. "You see, the original treaty was based on the assumption that all parties were negotiating in good faith. But you spent months planning to attack our colonies the moment the treaty expired. That suggests you weren't being entirely honest with us." War Chief Gorthak's scales shifted to a nervous yellow color. "We were exploring our options." "Of course you were," said Narray kindly. "And we have been exploring ours as well. General Wu Hyun, would you be so good as to show our guests what we've been growing here?" General Wu Hyun nodded and walked to what looked like a simple window. He pressed his hand against the glass and spoke a single word in Old Korean. "Boyojweo." "Show them." The world outside the window began to change. the peaceful farms and gardens, started to move. What had looked like ordinary plants revealed themselves to be something else entirely. Trees unfolded into communication arrays. Flower beds transformed into weapon platforms. The charming village houses opened like mechanical flowers, revealing surveillance and defense systems that belonged in science fiction. But the most terrifying change was in the ground itself. The soil began to shift and flow, revealing that the entire surface of Haven was not natural earth, but a single vast organism. Every acre of farmland, every garden path, every peaceful meadow was part of one enormous living machine. Haven has been our most successful agricultural project, explained General Wu Hyun conversationally. We've spent 4 centuries breeding a planet that can think, feel, and defend itself. Every particle of matter on this world is part of a single consciousness that we call the garden. Queen Melody made a sound like a broken song. The entire planet is alive? Oh yes, said Narai happily. And it's been listening to everything you've said since you landed. Haven, dear, would you say hello to our guests? The voice that answered seemed to come from everywhere at once. From the air, from the furniture, from the very atoms around them. Hello, said the planet in a voice like wind through wheat fields. Welcome to my body. Please do not be alarmed. I am designed for peace, but I am very good at protecting my friends. The aliens looked around in horror as they realized they were sitting inside a living world that could hear their thoughts and feel their heartbeats. Now then, said President Na-Ray, refilling the teacups as if nothing unusual had happened, let's discuss terms. But first, I think we should establish some new ground rules. She pulled out a data pad that looked like it was made of crystallized starlight. First, complete withdrawal of all alien military forces to your home systems within 30 standard days. Second, reparations for threatening human civilians during what was supposed to be peacetime. Third, technology sharing agreements that compensate us for the defensive expenses we incurred during your preparation for war. Fourth, establishment of human monitoring stations in every system that participated in the war declaration. Chancellor. Vex's 6 arms waved frantically. These terms are completely one-sided. They're barely different from conquest. Oh no, said Narai with gentle correction. These are our diplomatic terms. They're designed to ensure this kind of misunderstanding never happens again. She smiled the way grandmothers smile when they're about to teach difficult children an important lesson. Our military terms are significantly less favorable. General Wu Hyun, would you mind showing them option B? The general nodded and spoke. Another word. Jonjeng. War. The sky outside the cottage windows darkened as something enormous moved between Haven and its sun. The aliens looked up to see a sight that would haunt their nightmares forever. 3 nearby stars were slowly going out, not exploding, not dying, simply being turned off like light switches by human technology that operated on scales beyond comprehension. We have learned to control stellar fusion, explained General Wu Hyun matter-of-factly. It's quite useful for making points during negotiations. The stars reappeared as suddenly as they had vanished, but the message was clear. Humans could turn off suns. As I was saying, continued Nare pleasantly, these are our diplomatic terms. We prefer diplomacy. It's much tidier than the alternatives. War Chief Gorthak was making sounds like a broken engine. You could destroy our entire civilization. Well, yes, agreed Nare. But that would be terribly rude, and we were raised to be. 6 months after the signing of the new Galactic Accord, the galaxy had settled into what historians would later call the Second Peace. It looked very much like the first peace, except that everyone now understood who was really in charge. Ambassador. Tejo stood at the podium in the Great Hall on Kepler Prime, addressing the Galactic Council for the final time before his retirement. He had spent 40 years as humanity's diplomatic representative, and today he would give his farewell speech. Honored delegates, he began with the same friendly smile that had started this whole mess. It has been my pleasure to serve as Earth's ambassador during this interesting period in galactic history. The alien leaders sat quietly in their chairs, looking like students who had been thoroughly disciplined by a patient teacher. War Chief Gorthak had lost most of his aggressive bluster. Queen Melody sang only soft, respectful songs. Chancellor Vex's 6 arms remained carefully folded in his lap. As I prepare to return to Earth, continued Tejo, I thought it might be helpful to share some final observations about human nature. After all, we will be neighbors for a very long time. He activated the hall's display system, showing peaceful scenes from across human space, farmers tending their crops, children playing in gardens, scientists studying distant stars. The most important thing to understand about humans, he said, is that we genuinely mean it when we say we prefer peace. We are not a naturally aggressive species. We do not enjoy conquest for its own sake. We would much rather spend our time creating beautiful things than destroying them. The aliens listened carefully. They had learned that every word humans spoke in diplomatic settings had at least 3 different meanings. However, continued Tejo, and the temperature in the hall seemed to drop several degrees, humans have one peculiar trait that sets us apart from most species. We are extraordinarily good at preparing for problems that have not happened yet. The display changed, showing the hidden military installations that had been revealed during the recent conflict. You see, most species prepare for the wars they have already fought. They build weapons to counter the threats they have already faced. They train soldiers to win the battles they have already lost. He paused to take a sip of water. Humans prepare for wars that do not exist. We design weapons to counter threats that have not been invented. We train for scenarios that exist only in our imagination. Chief Scientist Hyarin entered the hall, carrying a datapad and wearing the expression of someone about to share fascinating research results. She was a small woman with bright eyes who had spent her entire life studying the impossible and making it routine. "Forgive the interruption, Ambassador," she said politely, "but I thought the Council might be interested in our latest research findings." Tejo smiled. "Of course, Dr. Hyarin. Please share your discoveries with our friends." Hyarin activated her datapad, and the hall filled with images that made the aliens' various sensory organs ache. "During our recent defensive activities," she explained, "we had the opportunity to test several experimental technologies. The results were quite educational. The display showed weapon systems that seemed to operate outside normal physics. Defensive technologies that protected against attacks from multiple dimensions simultaneously. Ships that existed in several different time periods at once. For example," continued Hyarin, "we discovered that our reality editing weapons work much better than our theoretical models predicted. We can now remove objects from existence so thoroughly that the universe forgets they ever existed at all." War Chief Gorthak made a small whimpering sound. "We also learned that our time dilution fields can be used defensively," she went on cheerfully. We can slow down incoming attacks so much that enemy weapons take centuries to reach their targets. Very useful for giving us time to think of appropriate responses. Queen Melody's song became barely audible. But perhaps most interestingly, said Hierin, we discovered that our dimensional folding technology allows us to store entire fleets in spaces smaller than atoms. We have been wondering what to do with all those extra ships. She looked up at the terrified alien delegates with genuine curiosity. Does anyone have any suggestions? We hate to waste perfectly good starships. Ambassador Tae-ho cleared his throat gently. Perhaps we could discuss fleet storage solutions later, Dr. Hierin. I believe our friends would like to hear about our more peaceful projects. Oh, yes, of course, said Hierin, brightening. Well, we have been working on some lovely new technologies for planetary landscaping. We can now reshape entire worlds in a matter of hours, very useful for creating beautiful parks and gardens. She showed images of human worlds being terraformed by machines that worked like artists painting on cosmic canvases. We thought perhaps some of our neighbors might like to have their planets improved, she continued innocently. Better weather, more fertile soil, more attractive geography. We could have teams of landscape architects visit your worlds next month if you're interested. The aliens understood perfectly. The same technology that could create beautiful gardens could turn their home worlds into anything humans wanted them to be. That's very generous, said Chancellor Vex carefully, but our worlds are quite satisfactory as they are. Wonderful, said Hierin. It's always nice when people are happy with what they have. Speaking of happiness, Ambassador, shouldn't we tell them about the children? Tae-ho's smile became even more pleasant. An excellent suggestion, Dr. Hierin. The display changed to show human schools across the galaxy. Children were playing games that looked innocent and educational, learning about history and science and art, laughing and running and growing up in peaceful communities. Human education has always been very important to us, explained Tae-ho. We want our children to be prepared for whatever future they might face. The aliens watched human children playing what looked like simple games of strategy and cooperation, but their trained eyes began to notice patterns. The games were teaching tactical thinking. The sports were building skills useful for zero gravity, combat. The art projects were exercises in three-dimensional spatial reasoning. We have found, continued Tae-ho, that children learn best when they don't realize they're learning. These young people will grow up thinking they simply enjoyed their childhood games. On the screen, a human child named Young Sik was building something out of blocks, while his teacher, Ms. Ji-won, watched approvingly. The structure looked like a simple castle, but it incorporated advanced engineering principles and defensive strategies that most military academies would struggle to teach. Young Sik is 7 years old, noted Tae-ho. By the time he reaches adulthood, he will have internalized strategic thinking patterns that most species cannot master in centuries of study. The child looked up at the camera and waved happily, completely unaware that he was part of the most sophisticated military education program in galactic history. But here is the most remarkable thing, said Tae-ho, and his voice carried a note of genuine pride. These children are not being trained to be soldiers. They are being raised to be artists and scientists and farmers and explorers. The strategic thinking is simply a useful life skill. Ms. Ji-won knelt down to help Young Sik with his block castle. She was a gentle teacher who loved children and wanted them to have happy lives. She was also a retired colonel who had spent 20 years developing human military doctrine. Tell me, Young Sik, she said kindly, what would happen if someone tried to attack your castle from this direction? The 7-year-old studied his creation thoughtfully. They couldn't, he said finally. The walls are angled wrong, and there's no cover for their approach. They'd have to come from the other side, but then they'd be in range of the defensive towers. He looked up at his teacher with bright, innocent eyes. Should I build more walls, Ms. G1? That's up to you, dear, she replied. What do you think would work best? On Kepler Prime, the alien delegates watched this scene with growing horror. Human children were casually discussing defensive strategies the way other species' children talked about their favorite colors. The next generation of humans, said Tae-ho conversationally, will be even more creative than we are. They are growing, up in a galaxy where impossible things happen every day. Their idea of normal includes technologies that rewrite physics and strategies that operate across multiple dimensions. He walked closer to the alien delegates, his manner still friendly and unthreatening. Do you know what young Sick wants to be when he grows up? He asked. The aliens waited in fearful silence. A gardener, said Tae-ho with genuine warmth. He wants to grow beautiful flowers and make people happy, just like his friend Mi-young, who wants to be a painter, and their classmate Tae-min, who dreams of exploring distant stars. The display showed more human children talking about their innocent dreams and ambitions. None of them want to be soldiers, continued Tae-ho. They are being raised in a culture that values peace, creativity, and cooperation above all else. He paused, and his smile became slightly sharper. But they are also being raised in a culture that has spent 1,000 years proving that the best way to preserve peace is to be absolutely prepared for war. Dr. Hyrin packed up her datapad and prepared to leave. Oh, one more thing, she said cheerfully. We should mention that everything we've